is, I would say, is very similar, at least to my mind, is to the question, what is spirituality? What is spirituality is what is the most important thing. In that it entails the complete experience of what it means to be a human and what is important, what is meaningful, actually. I would say that what the most important thing is. Yeah, that's a great question. What is meaningful is similar to that. I remember James Fowler, he was a developmental and spiritual researcher. He looked at stages, what he called stages of faith, and I think I believe the question he asked people was, "What is the most important thing?" in a way, and saw how they viewed faith through that lens or their life, basically. So we don't. If we ask that question, what is the most meaningful thing? What is the meaning of life, maybe, those kinds of questions, it goes beyond preconceived ideas for most people about spirituality. Whether or not you're interested in spirituality or not doesn't really matter, because everyone can relate to what is the most important thing. And in as many people say, in I think Tony Robbins and other coaches, they speak about, it's not really the car you're after, it's the feeling it gives you. What is that feeling? It could be fulfillment or something else, contempt, or yeah, just being happy somehow. You get a feeling from it, and the feeling, I would say, if it is a feeling, it's definitely not one of Paul Ekman's emotions, but the feeling you get with the meaningfulness. What is meaningfulness? I think that's a state of mind. Something feels meaningful. It's not it's not a real feeling in that sense, but it is something that we can relate to. We can speak about something feeling or being meaningful for us. And to me, that is the most important thing to do or feel. Find that meaningfulness, find that meaning. That you can even say that the question itself is the answer in many ways, just as they say in many traditions, of course, that they even say that explicitly. The question is the answer. And the question is often in the spiritual traditions at least, that you just ask yourself, who am I? What is this? What is this mind? What is this? Who am I? And when we go to the root of who we are or what this is, we will find, yeah, that. And in finding that, the question will dissolve. And what people say that find that is also that that is the most meaningful thing. Or things become meaningful through that endeavor. And that's also one way of seeing it. So people live their lives. And I like the analogy with a dream and being in a dream, not knowing it's a dream, and then waking up from the dream. That's used in many spiritual traditions and in the Matrix, in a way. It's not really a dream in the Matrix, but the Matrix here is the dream. In the Matrix, there are, of course, robots creating a virtual reality in which they put human minds and trick them into believing that it's reality. And what traditions speak about is something called Maya, or maybe we can say samsara. You believe your own thoughts. You believe the story your thoughts are telling you, and you believe the dream just as you believe a dream at night. So at night, when you're dreaming in that type of dream, again, just like people can relate to meaningfulness and the most important thing, whether or not they're interested in spirituality or not, people can relate to dreaming too, even if they don't have dreams. But most people, or everybody, has dreams, but some people don't remember them. Anyway, we have dreams. We realize that we are dreaming, or we can realize that we're dreaming, and that is awakening in the spiritual traditions. a way of explaining it at least. So we can be dreaming at night and we can become lucid. We can realize that it's a dream. And to the degree that we realize that, the dream stops being a nightmare for once, or for starters, at least to a degree. And it directly correlates with the degree the degree to which we wake up or become lucid. We can have a sense that it's a dream. We can sort of have a sort of a feeling that maybe this doesn't make sense, or something's off. And then we can have a full-fledged lucid experience where we become fully aware of the fact that it's a dream, and we are free within the dream. We can do things, we can fly, we can talk to people, we can do whatever. And it becomes deeply meaningful. It becomes deeply satisfying, I would say, at least. And most people, again, who has done that agree, just as people, which is my point I'm making, people who are experiencing, or who have experienced awakening in the waking state, becoming lucid or becoming awake in this state that we are in right now, they say the same thing. It becomes deeply meaningful, deeply satisfying, to an extent that is beyond even explanation, or you can convey it. It is, of course, again, using your word again many times, like someone explaining, some other deeply meaningful experience. You can't really convey it, of course. The problem with awakening is that you can speak about going to on a trip, or getting married, or something similar, to be deeply meaningful, and people can relate because they can see that they can see that happening in front. They can make up that, imagine it themselves, but they cannot understand. It is hard, at least. That's why I'm using the analogy of the dream. It is hard to imagine what awakening is. So the analogy of the dream, in which we wake up in the night, or we wake up in the dream during the night, and become lucid, as it were. We become, enlightened, and we realize it's a dream, and our fears fall away to a large extent. Our worries fall away to a large extent, and we become again free, and it becomes meaningful. It's fun. We interact with the objects in the dream, and we're well aware that it's a dream. So realizing it's a dream doesn't make it we don't become nihilistic or jaded. It's actually the opposite. And I would say that it's, for most people, the same in becoming lucid or enlightened or awake in the waking state. They don't become jaded, they don't become nihilistic, they don't act poorly. Some people do. It's it's a tricky subject, because in becoming free, we can sometimes become, so in Zen Buddhism, they have this expression called drunk on emptiness, in which emptiness is a term within Buddhism, especially, which is it's a deep concept. I'm not going to go into it, but it's a way of perceiving the world, or being the world, being in the world, where everything is seen as empty, just as a dream. A dream at night is empty in the sense that it's nothing really there. We see things, we interact with things, and we're happy. We lose if it's a happy dream, or we become lucid in it. But it's empty. It will just evaporate. It will literally just disappear as soon as you wake up, or the dream changes. Where was I going with that? Yeah, emptiness. So the traditions say that this is the same thing, and most people can, I think, relate to that, at least theoretically too, that emptiness is here too. This will also, it's just a long dream, or it's a long a longer life, longer. We have a longer life in the waking state, but it will end, and then it's just gone. So in that way, it is also ephemeral, or it's just fleeting thought in a way. It feels like a long time, but yeah, when it is ending, it will have felt like just a blink of an eye, just as a dream at night. So the realization of emptiness, people can get drunk on that, is what Zen Buddhists speak about. This is, you can become drunk, and you can become sort of, I guess, crazy, just like someone is crazy, can become crazy drinking alcohol or taking some sort of drug, for good or bad. It isn't altogether a great experience, definitely not with alcohol and other drugs. But even with the spiritual awakening, becoming lucid, becoming enlightened, becoming awake, or yeah, these words, moksha, theosis, nirvana, fanaa, whatever word, the peace that passeth understanding can make you go a bit crazy. And there's definitely this overlap between psychosis and spiritual awakening and psychedelics, and these different states, and they can be very similar. One of the big differences, though, is that most people going through spiritual awakenings don't become dysfunctional, and they become really happy. Most people who are suffering from psychosis are doing just that. Are suffering from it, even though the actual experience can sound and even be sort of similar, in the way that the world is experienced differently than it is from a state of being that is still identified with a narrative self-sense, the dream that the mind is telling most people. So what happens with spiritual awakening is that people stop believing in that dream, just as people become awake, or stop believing the dream at night and become lucid. So we can become lucid, and in becoming lucid in the waking state, just as in the nighttime, that entails a large degree of what people would perceive as meaningfulness, deeply meaningful stuff. If we take psychedelics that I mentioned, people say the same thing there. It's for sure, it can be very, I'm not recommending it, but this is just data. People go through psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, which also changes your brain state. It changes your brain waves, your brain wave, and takes your brain activity. And it is almost like a waking dream, you could say. And in that, people experience deeply meaningful things. That is what they say. That is their direct experience. If they are to put this on a high score list, where they from, the five most important or most meaningful experiences they've ever had, because they've asked the people going through this very question, and what they do is they put this experience with the psychedelics in the top three. Some top three. Some people even put it at the top as the most important or most meaningful experience that they've ever had in their entire life, and that is including going on a great trip or getting married and having children, whatever it is. This is more important. This is more meaningful. It touches people in a way that, is more meaningful basically than anything else. So that is also what I like about the mystical traditions, is namely that it is about direct experience. The direct experience, if we have a dream at night and we become lucid, it is a direct experience. The meaning, the deeply meaningful, feeling that overwhelms you when you have that experience is palpable. the same in the waking state. If you go through a spiritual awakening, whatever that is, whatever you think that is, it's deeply meaningful. That is what people say subjectively from their own experience. The same thing is true for people going through psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. I'm speaking about psychotherapy here, but it's just that that is where they've done these studies and asked them about meaningfulness. Of course, people anecdotally also say those things in different ways. It is also very I don't know I don't know when I use the word dangerous, but it is laced with difficulties and possible problems to use psychedelics for sure, and definitely in a non-regulated environment. So again, I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying what people are saying and what is true. It is also true that a lot of people suffer difficult experiences using psychedelics in different kinds of environment. Again, especially unregulated ones. So, getting back to the deeply meaningful experience and the mystical traditions, the mystical traditions like Sufism in Islam and Kabbala in Judaism and Christian mysticism, Zen Buddhism mentioned, Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, all these traditions, they also speak about direct experience. So it doesn't matter if you're a believer or not. You don't have to believe in anything. Everything is based on direct experience, just as becoming lucid in the dream again, or having that psychedelic experience, which, yeah, it's just an experience, and you yourself make up your mind afterwards. Do you think that it's more meaningful, or is it worthwhile for you or not? And if it isn't, it isn't. But people tend to say that it is. That's my point, and that's what people say when I go through spiritual awakenings too. It is deeply, deeply moving, deeply touching. It is finding yourself. It is finding the question to who am I? The question to who am I is deeply meaningful to discover. It is the only question in many of these traditions, like the Ramana Maharishi. He doesn't really have a tradition as such, but he's a great teacher that has spouted a lot of people following his advice, at least, and asking the question, who am I? Zen Buddhism also uses that as what they call a koan. You ask that question over and over and over for years during meditation, during your daily activities, even during your sleep, if you're able to. Who am I? And going to the bottom of that is deeply meaningful. It is, in many ways, the most important thing. And in doing that, just as a dream, becoming lucid in a dream, becoming lucid in the waking state makes not only that experience meaningful, but the life itself. So searching for meaningfulness, searching for the most important thing is important, is or can be deeply meaningful. And in finding it, life becomes that. Life becomes, I mean, it's not, it's not black or white that people who haven't found it, but for the person comparing their life before and after, 99.999%, I think, or maybe we should say just 98%. I don't have the data, but they will say that my life becomes so much more meaningful having this direct experience. And it's not just an experience. It depends for people, of course, if they have an opening for a while and it goes back. But if you get a more ongoing or more permanent realization, a permanent shift, a permanent stopping of believing in what the narrative mind is telling you, then you will have an ongoing, deeply meaningful experience in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day living. Every time you open your eyes, and maybe even at night, it will just become much more meaningful, not having to do anything, not having to seek anything up, but rather, as Rumi said, that in the absence of seeking happiness, happiness appears. When you find yourself, there's nothing else to seek. There's nothing else to do, really. But there is this peace that passes understanding, that just appears and is prevalent and is palpable and is deeply, deeply meaningful and well worth well worthwhile seeking out if you feel like it. If that is something that you feel drawn to. It seems like some people are just drawn to that type of endeavor. But what I like about it is that it isn't about spirituality as such, just in the way, just spirituality defined as the most important thing or the most meaningful thing, maybe. Because I think we can, to a large extent, quantify meaningfulness if we want to speak about it in rational or materialistic way, so to speak. That if you are looking for meaningfulness, that is a way to go. That is the answer to the existential angst, the existential anxiety, worry. It is to find yourself. It is to find the person who is worrying, the narrative self, the self-referential thoughts that are believed, and in that believing there is suffering. When there is no belief in those thoughts or ideas, the suffering ends. So nirvana means cessation, and it is the end of the thinker, the end of the ego, the end of the egoic mind. Not necessarily the end of activity within the egoic mind, but the end of identification or believing in that activity. It becomes like clouds in the sky or something else in the exterior world. It's just something that is there, but it isn't believed anymore. And it's really hard to imagine that. I think it doesn't, I think you can to some extent realize it in a practical way with just having some sort of psychological issue, and you work through that through psychotherapy, and you don't have that, you're not bothered by certain kinds of thoughts or feelings, for example. That's just scratching, though, compared to, and I don't want to make it, like it's better or in that way. It's just like Ken Wilber used to say that he maybe still do, I think he's alive, that psychotherapy stops the dream or the waking life, uses the waking life as the dream as a metaphor for the normal waking life. So psychotherapy stops the dream from becoming a nightmare, whereas meditation or spirituality or deep meaningfulness, awakening, helps you wake up from the dream, just as we spoke about with the becoming lucid in dream or becoming lucid or enlightened in the waking state. It's very different, but it has similarities for sure in that you're not bothered by thoughts anymore. It's just as psychotherapy, you're not removing the ground, maybe the real problem, shall we say, or the root cause, which is the identification with the narrative thinking mind itself. You're just moving around within that narrative mind and trying to shape it up a bit, which is a good thing, can be great. And depending on what your goal in life is, it's, no one needs to inquire into the nature of reality or who they are or what this is or anything like that. It's for everyone to do or not do. But I think it's good to know that there are data for those who are interested in that, supporting it. Not just as in a way that we see that meditation do improve or can improve happiness. I wouldn't necessarily just to become happy. I mean, it's really individual, and it's really depending on who you are and what you're after, what your problems are, and deciding what to do. Only you can do that, of course, in listening to people and speaking to, getting information. But it isn't a fix by any means. because it's also not a sure bet, basically. If you go into spirituality in the way that the mystical tradition speaks about, or the way I'm speaking about it here, you don't know what you're gonna get, and yeah, and you don't know if it's gonna take 5 years, 5 lifetimes. So if it's just I want to feel a bit better, it may not be the way to go. Then psychotherapy may be better, or start working out or changing your dietary schedule or whatever. But yeah, it's safe to say that deeply meaningful experiences come out of deep inquiry, going deep within, deep within the nature of reality, your own mind, your own consciousness, seeing through the narrative your self-referential thoughts, the egoic mind, whatever you want to call it, and wake up from it, waking up to the here and now, waking up just as you become lucid in a dream. It's very similar. So that's what I like that metaphor very much, because people can relate to it. At least most people dream. At least most people have some recollection of having a dream sometime. And some people even have recollections of becoming or realizing that it is a dream in the night, during the night. And yeah, so it's I think it's it's a metaphor that can be used to explain sort of what awakening is and why you become free from it, or freer, shall we say. It's not total freedom, but it's closer to that, much more free than you become in general from psychotherapy or other types of practices. But it's not for everyone. Just as psychedelics isn't for everyone, psychotherapy isn't for everyone either. Nothing is basically for everyone except maybe water and air. But most things are different from different individuals, and yeah, you have to see what works for you. But yeah, anyway, this was a talk about meaningfulness and what is the most important thing in life. I think to me, yeah, it is finding that, of course, for everyone. Only you know yourself, but to me it is finding that and realizing it and waking up from that question even. So living it, being it, having that direct experience of this is the most important thing in life, this very moment. That is what the traditions say. That will be or may be your own experience if you go through that, what they also tell you to go through. Okay, best of luck. See you in other